Chapter 19 of Plain Tales from the Hills. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mike Harris. Plain Tales from the Hills by Rudyard Kipling. Chapter 19. The Broken Link Handicapped. While the snaffle holds or the long neck stings, while the big beam tilts or the last bell rings, while horses are horses to train and to race, then women and wine take a second place for me, while a short 10-3 has a field to squander or fence to face. From Song of the G.R. There are more ways of running a horse to suit your book than pulling his head off in the straight. Some men forget this. Understand clearly that all racing is rotten, as everything connected with losing money must be. Out here, in addition to its inherent rottenness, it has the merit of being two-thirds sham, looking pretty on paper only. Everyone knows everyone else far too well for business purposes. How on earth can you rack and harry and post a man for his lossings when you are fond of his wife and live in the same station with him? He says, "On the Monday following, I can't settle just yet." You say, "All right, old man," and think yourself lucky if you pull off 900 out of a 2,000 rupee debt. Any way you look at it, Indian racing is immoral and expensively immoral, which is much worse. If a man wants your money, he ought to ask for it or send round a subscription list, instead of juggling about the country with an Australian larrikin, a brumby with as much breeding as the boy, a brace of chumars in gold-laced caps, 3 or 4 ekka ponies with hogged manes, and a switch-tailed demi-rep of a mare called Arab because she has a kink in her flag. Racing leads to the shroff quicker than anything else. But if you have no conscience, and no sentiments, and good hands, and some knowledge of pace, and 10 years' experience of horses, and, of course, several thousand rupees a month, I believe that you can occasionally contrive to pay your shoeing bills. Did you ever know Shackles, BWG 15-13-8, coarse, loose, mule-like ears, barrel as long as a gate post, tough as a telegraph wire, and the queerest brute that ever looked through a bridle? He was of no brand, being one of an ear-nicked mob taken into the Brucephalus at £41 10 shillings a head to make up freight, and sold raw and out of condition at Calcutta for Rs. 275. People who lost money on him called him a brumby, but if ever any horse had Harpoon's shoulders and the gin's temper, Shackles was that horse. 2 miles was his own particular distance. He trained himself, ran himself, and rode himself, and if his jockey insulted him by giving him hints, he shut up at once and bucked the boy off. He objected to dictation. 2 or 3 of his owners did not understand this and lost money in consequence. At last he was bought by a man who discovered that, if a race was to be won, Shackles, and Shackles only, would win it in his own way, so long as his jockey sat still. This man had a riding boy called Brunt, a lad from Perth, West Australia, and he taught Brunt, with a trainer's whip, the hardest thing a jockey can learn: to sit still, and to keep on sitting still. When Brunt fairly grasped this truth, Shackles devastated the country. No weight could stop him at his own distance, and the fame of Shackles spread from Ajmer in the south to Chedputter in the north. There was no horse like Shackles, so long as he was allowed to do his work in his own way. But he was beaten in the end, and the story of his fall is enough to make angels weep. At the lower end of the Chedputter racecourse, just before the turn into the straight, the track passes close to a couple of old brick mounds enclosing a funnel-shaped hollow. The big end of the funnel is not 6 feet from the railings on the off side. The astounding peculiarity of the course is that if you stand at one particular place about half a mile away inside the course and speak at an ordinary pitch, your voice just hits the funnel of the brick mounds and makes a curious whining echo there. A man discovered this one morning by accident while out training with a friend. He marked the place to stand and speak from with a couple of bricks, and he kept his knowledge to himself. Every peculiarity of a course is worth remembering in a country where rats play the mischief with the elephant litter, and stewards build jumps to suit their own stables. This man ran a very fairish, country-bred, long, racking high mare with the temper of a fiend, and the paces of an airy, wandering seraph. A drifty, glidey stretch, that mare was, as a delicate tribute to Miss Reaver, called the Lady Regula Baden, or, for short, Regula Baden. Shackles' jockey, Brunt, was a quiet, well-behaved boy, but his nerves had been shaken. He began his career by riding jump races in Melbourne, where a few stewards want lynching, and was one of the jockeys who came through the awful butchery, perhaps you will recall it, of the Maribyrnong Plate. The walls were colonial ramparts, logs of jarrak spiked into masonry, with wings as strong as church buttresses. Once in his stride, a horse had to jump or fall. He couldn't run out. In the Maribyrnong Plate, 12 horses were jammed at the second wall. Red Hat, leading, fell this side and threw out the glen, and the ruck came up behind, and the space between wing and wing was one struggling, screaming, kicking shambles. 4 jockeys were taken out dead, 3 were very badly hurt, and Brunt was among the 3. He told the story of the Maribyrnong Plate sometimes, and when he described how Wally on Red Hat said as the mare fell under him, "God a mercy, I'm done for," and how next instant Sithy there and White Otter had crushed the life out of poor Wally, and the dust hit a small hell of men and horses, no one marvelled that Brunt had dropped jump races and Australia together. Regula Baden's owner knew that story by heart. Brunt never varied it in the telling. He had no education. Shackles came to the Chedputter autumn races one year, and his owner walked about insulting the sportsmen of Chedputter generally, till they went to the Honorary Secretary in a body and said, "Appoint handicappers and arrange a race which shall break Shackles and humble the pride of his owner." The districts rose against Shackles and sent up of their best: Owsle, who was supposed to be able to do his mile in 1:53; Petard, the stud bred, trained by a cavalry regiment who knew how to train; Gringalet, the ewe lamb of the 75th; Bobolink, the pride of Peshawar, and many others. They called that race the Broken Link Handicap, because it was to smash Shackles. And the handicappers piled on the weights, and the fund gave 800 rupees, and the distance was round the course for all horses. Shackles' owner said, "You can arrange the race with regard to Shackles only. So long as you don't bury him under weight cloths, I don't mind." Regula Baden's owner said, "I throw in my mare to fret Owsle. 6 furlongs is Regula's distance, and she'll then lie down and die. So also will Owsle, for his jockey doesn't understand a waiting race." Now this was a lie, for Regula had been in work for 2 months at Derra, and her chances were good, always supposing that Shackles broke a blood vessel, or Brunt moved on him. The plunging in the lotteries was fine. They filled 8,000 rupee lotteries on the Broken Link Handicap, and the account in the Pioneer said that "favouritism was divided." In plain English, the various contingents were wild on their respective horses, for the handicappers had done their work well. The Honorary Secretary shouted himself hoarse through the din, and the smoke of the cheroots was like the smoke, and the rattling of the dice boxes like the rattle of small arms fire. 10 horses started, very level, and Regula Baden's owner cantered out on his back to a place inside the circle of the course, where 2 bricks had been thrown. He faced toward the brick mounds at the lower end of the course and waited. The story of the running is in the Pioneer. At the end of the first mile, Shackles crept out of the ruck, well on the outside, ready to get round to the turn, lay hold of the bit, and spin up the straight before the others knew he had got away. Brunt was sitting still, perfectly happy, listening to the drum, drum, drum of the hoofs behind, and knowing that in about 20 strides Shackles would draw one deep breath and go up the last half mile like the Flying Dutchman. As Shackles went short to take the turn and came abreast of the brick mound, Brunt heard above the noise of the wind in his ears a whining, wailing voice on the offside saying, "God a mercy, I'm done for." In one stride Brunt saw the whole seething smash of the Maribyrnong Plate before him, started in his saddle and gave a yell of terror. The start brought the heels into Shackles' side, and the scream hurt Shackles' feelings. He couldn't stop dead, but he did put out his feet and slide along for 50 yards, and then very gravely and judiciously bucked off Brunt, a shaking, terror-stricken lump, while Regular Baden made a neck-and-neck race with Bobolink up the straight, and won by a short head, Petard a bad third. Shackle's owner in the stand tried to think that his field glasses had gone wrong. Regular Baden's owner, waiting by the 2 bricks, gave one deep sigh of relief and cantered back to the stand. He had won, in lotteries and bets, about 15,000. It was a broken link handicap with a vengeance. It broke nearly all the men concerned, and nearly broke the heart of Shackle's owner. He went down to interview Brunt. The boy lay livid and gasping with fright where he had tumbled off. The sin of losing the race never seemed to strike him. All he knew was that Wally had called him, that the call was a warning, and were he cut in two for it, he would never get up again. His nerve had gone altogether, and he only asked his master to give him a good thrashing and let him go. He was fit for nothing, he said. He got his dismissal and crept up to the paddock, white as chalk, with blue lips, his knees giving way under him. People said nasty things in the paddock, but Brunt never heeded. He changed into tweeds, took his stick, and went down the road, still shaking with fright and muttering over and over again, "God have mercy, I'm done for." To the best of my knowledge and belief, he spoke the truth. So now you know how the broken link handicap was run and won. Of course, you don't believe it. You'd credit anything about Russia's designs on India or the recommendations of the Currency Commission, but a little bit of sober fact is more than you can stand. End of Chapter 19. The Broken Link Handicapped. Recorded by Mike Harris.